My name is Marissa Lichwick. I'm an actress. First and foremost, I have my undergrad degree in it, and then I have a graduate degree in it. And I have worked at the Goodman and Steppenwolf and Court Theater and the Writers Theater, as well as Silk Road Rising. So a lot of the theaters in Chicago I've worked at. I am a adjunct professor at City College for voice and speech, and now I'll be teaching theater and theater history. Recently, I made the film, and we made the live action in a day, and then it took me about 2 months to do the animation. And then so finally we put the film together right before COVID hit. And so I had the film, and I was able to submit it to different festivals, different award festivals, and it started winning awards. And I was really surprised. And then I sent it to more, and then I won more awards. And my film is called Yellow Dress, and that's also the name of my solo show. In the orphanage, you get one outfit a month that you wear, or in the orphanage where I stayed. And so I got to wear a yellow dress for a month, and I just kept looking in the mirror because it was a dress. I mean, it was ripped. But to me at that time, I felt like such a princess, you know? And so here's like lice running through my head. But I didn't care because I had this yellow dress, and it was really the first time I saw myself, which is what I tell, people. I saw myself, and then I thought I was so pretty because I had this yellow dress. So it really uplifted every fiber of my being, this yellow dress. I've had a crazy past. And so I've been able to use a lot of the pain and trauma of my past into my work, and people can relate to it. I was born in Korea, and both my parents they were missionaries. They went to school to be pastors. They were both missionaries. They fell in love, got, married. They had my brother, and then they had me, and then I think there were problems in the marriage, and then so they separated. My birth father sent my birth mother off to the countryside to live with his mother, and he's like, you take the kids and you go and you live in the countryside. He's like, I'm going to stay in Seoul, and I'm going to preach in Seoul and, be the pastor for this church. And she did that for a little bit, and then she pretty much was like, forget this. She's like, what? And by that point, she knew there was another woman that he was involved with. So she was like, screw him. He can take care of his own kids. And so she just up and left. So that left me and my brother to be raised by my grandmother. And she raised us up until I was about 5. And then we had to go to Seoul to live with my father. This didn't make my stepmother really happy because she just had a baby with my father, and she didn't want her precious babies to be with my brother and I, who she just looked down as awful orphans, I don't know. And then so eventually they got in a fight. My brother and I ran away. We got caught that night. They brought us back. And then that was a good reason for her to say, put them in the orphanage. Like, they're too much trouble. So they put us in an orphanage. My father tells no one. It wasn't a nice orphanage. It was a harsh place. I saw kids get treated I just saw things that shocked me as a like 5, 6 year old. And then from there, we got adopted. We got adopted about 11 months later, and we went to America. My uncle came back he saw us on the news. He came to get us in August. So we left at the end of July. He came in August, and he missed us by 3 weeks. So it's just crazy because that could have completely changed my life. Anyway, we get adopted, but we get adopted into a family of adoptees. My adoptive mother adopted 8 kids. We were the first 2 Koreans, but she already had 3 white adopted kids. And then she adopted 3 more Korean kids. So like there were 8 of us that she raised. And the problem with my parents were that they never finished high school. You know, she dropped out at 16. My father dropped out at 16. It was a small town in New York State. So he had to like work in a factory. She, had a baby really young. I don't know what they were doing or thinking. So there were rituals, like every night she put up a menu like on the fridge, and it was always like Monday night was hot dogs and French fries, and Tuesday was like macaroni and cheese. And we ate the same thing until the day I left home. And then same thing with our lunches. We would have peanut butter jelly sandwich until the day I graduated high school. Everything had to be controlled because you have 8 kids. And then the food was the same all the time because you have 8 kids. And then we would go out, and then my poor brother, who was 15, had to pretend he was 10 so he could order off the kids' menu. It was wacky growing up with them, just wacky in that reality in and of itself. But it was also an abusive environment. We just all, after a while, just tried to avoid her because, I don't know, there was an anger that she had. And when it came out, it would come out. She was really verbally abusive to my other Korean sister and I. And then our other sister, she would hit her. But she would do very cruel things, like my sister didn't eat her chicken or something, and they picked it out of the garbage and made her eat the chicken, or they would dump the garbage on her bed, so that she could find her chicken and eat it. I felt like that was, I'm like, you're being demoralizing now. So she was abusive that way. My father to the same sister, she was the only white adopted girl. It was me and my sister who are Korean, and then there was my white sister who was adopted. And she was his target. But I learned about this so much later that I think we all had to go get therapy. We all live, she lives in Tennessee, my sister lives in Philly, my brother's in DC, I'm in Chicago, so we're all in different places. So that came much later. I had memories of being really hurt, beaten at the orphanage and with my stepmother. And I sort of kind of put that past me. I was like, this is my new life. And so I totally kind of killed the old me. And I was like, I'm an American, it's my new life. And so I embraced just learning English and just being a part of everyday life, like school. And then I was a cheerleader, so cheerleading practice, and then, you know, just like making friends, being social. I developed epilepsy, and so I started having seizures at 12, and that really did dominate a lot of my high school years, because I was in and out of hospitals, a lot of blood work. I did resent my parents, absolutely. Like, my mother was awful. I was sick. It was very clear that I was sick. We didn't understand why she adopted kids, because she would always say to us, "I should have never adopted you," whenever she got mad. So one time I asked her, "Why did you?" I think I got like a huge slap, and I was like 9 when I asked her that. You say something, a 9-year-old's going to be like, then why did you? And then she just would scream and yell, and school was an escape from her. So there was a lot of resentment, and I have to say today, nobody, with the exception of the 3 Korean kids, there were 5 Korean kids, but 3 Korean kids, we all keep in touch, because we have like wives and husbands and children. So we keep in touch, but we don't keep in touch with anyone else. And we don't keep in touch with our parents. Once we found out what my dad, was, just what my dad was like doing to my sister. So no one talks to my father, and nobody talks to my mother either. I call her from time to time because she's 80 now. And so I worry about her, because I'm like, what if she passes tomorrow? Yes, so my brother, who's the antithesis of me, he's social and he works the room and knows. He was able to meet a woman that helped him write a letter to a post-adoption agency. So she wrote a letter on my brother's behalf, and then they started searching for him. And then by Christmas of 2005, they found him. I had applied to a job in Korea because I was so exhausted from living in New York City, because it's such an exhausting city. And so I found my father, and I got a job. So I was the first, it was the first group of Westerners that was working at English Village, and I was one of them. We reunited. It was very awkward. I felt like I was in a dream. I didn't know what to say to him, because we had a translator the whole time. And he showed, obviously, he's a pastor, so he showed a lot of remorse. He wanted to pray. But then I was like, what was my mother's name? And he couldn't remember. And he was like, it's this or it's that. It was a long time ago. I can't remember. All his answers were, it was a long time ago. It was a long time ago. I mean, does our stepmother know that he met with us? And he's like, no. He's like, he told no one. He's like, you're still a secret. And I was like, what about my half-sister? He's like, she has no idea you exist. What I learned is that she went to Yonsei University as an English literature major. She's brilliant. And they gave her English lessons since she was a little girl on. They paid $2,000 or whatever, because he married a wealthier woman. So I was so angry. I was like, basically, I have a sister that went to Harvard, and then there's me, who you just dumped in an orphanage. I was like, do you ever think about the imbalance of that? And so he was very nice, like physically he was nice, his presence was nice, but all of his answers were so weird. And then like Korea was great, like exploring all of it. I enjoyed it. I stayed there for 15 months and I met my mother and she wanted to live with me. And so I was kind of like, I didn't even know what you look like until like 10 minutes ago. She wanted to live with me because I lived close to Seoul and she wanted to take classes. And I was just like, who are you? Like, oh my God, you're impeding. But anyway, but she wasn't nearly as bizarre as my father. My father left my stepmother. Terrible. He's not a good man. He left her, she went blind. He left. I mean, I was like, karma. I'm like, karma sucks. What was most profound to me was at the end, before I was leaving 2 weeks. 2 weeks prior to leaving, I saw my mother, my birth mom again. You know, she said, just go back to America, like you have your life. And at that time in Korea, this entire year, I met my husband, who I moved to Chicago for. And so I was falling in love as I was discovering myself. So it was just different in Korea because so much of my identity was there. And so I wanted to fulfill my identity so that when I came back, I would feel complete. And that never happened. Instead, it opened up more questions and it opened up more like boxes of anger or confusion. And so when I left Korea, it really was just like, look forward, look straight ahead, and just go.
Do you still keep in touch with your biological parents?
No, I could if I want with both of them, but I don't want to. I guess I'm slightly still angry. So 2006 was the first and the last time. Yeah, no, I never saw. I really, I guess, divested into my work. But I realized what I really needed was just a way to process what happened. And by turning to what I know best, which is performing, I was able to process it within the performing arena. So it's kind of like on my turf, with my talents, I give over this story. And so once I learned that, I was able to just take the story and give it to people without anything in return. I'm like, now it's just a story. Like I went through my little catharsis with it. I kind of evolved with the piece, and then now it's just a story for people to read or people to see if it gets done. Like as of right now, it's like my ultimate dream is to make a film of my journey, just not of my life, but of this particular thesis of what is home, which is really, like coming here and then going back, but then while I was in America, having a crazy family too. Like, how many crazy families can one person endure, But I'm breaking apart the pieces so that I can put it in an order where it makes sense to the audience and it's clear, and then it's also tolerable so that you buy the times that when it's really rough, and then you kind of come back down. So like you have climax, and then so I'm just breaking it up right now. And Yes, I've had a very traumatic past. I've used it for art, and my art is hard to watch, and it's traumatic as well. But despite all of these very harsh experiences, that doesn't mean that I'm a broken person, or that doesn't mean that I've had like, essentially, I don't feel like a victim. And I don't want people to look at adoptees and think, oh, what they must have gone through. You know, adoptees are not victims. We are products of our environment, we're products of our circumstance. I'm not a victim. My siblings are not victims. We can certainly play the victim, but I fight against it. And I have never felt like a victim. Even I've always been like happy person. Even when I got to the orphanage, I was happy because I got to be with other kids, even though they were bruised and burnt, and you know. Yeah, that's my big thing, is like victimization has no place here, because it's a rabbit hole, and it's a deep hole, and I've gone down that rabbit hole with my siblings when we get together, and it just everybody's crying by the end of the night, and it's just like, who's done us wrong, all of, you know, and I'm like, we can't do that anymore. I'm like, we're parents, we have loving partners. I was like, we are not victims. We were just products of our circumstance. And we all got out, and we have to work every day just to be good people, and you know, and for me it's to make stories that touch people and inspire people. Yeah.